This video is not one of my regular video reviews. This is a paid Kickstarter preview from a game that is going to be on Kickstarter soon. The game is called Steampunk Rally. The publisher contacted me some time ago asking me if I would be interested in filming a video preview. I asked him to send me the rulebook. I wanted to have a look at it and get a sense of whether I may like the game or not. And the game seemed promising. It seemed like a game that I would enjoy playing. Also, the rulebook was very short, so I was able to get a good sense of how the game would play in not too long. And so I received a prototype from the publisher, I played it, and today I'm going to tell a little bit about my experience of playing the game. Steampunk Rally is a game about a rally set in a steampunk universe. I guess that the title really is pretty appropriate. Inventors of the steampunk age decide to challenge each other in a rally, in a race in which they will drive their crazy inventions. Inventions that break down, that do crazy stuff, that have puffs of steam and fire and electricity coming out of them. You do get the sense that these inventions are really not all that safe. But safe. Well, hey, who knows? Maybe fun to drive them on an alpine road, because that's where they have decided to race their inventions. Not in Indianapolis or in any other nice professional track. That's what you do. Let's get in the craziest place on earth where to drive anything, even a goat, and we're gonna try some big machines with big engines and propulsors. There's the basic idea, which is a little strange, a little weird, and meant to be. This is a game that definitely has an irony to it. It's not one of those steampunk games in which steampunk becomes something between a cult and a way of living. It is a game that has a humorous component, which is perfectly captured by the crazy idea behind the idea of having a rally on the Alps with steampunk machines. Let me show you how the game plays. At the beginning of each game, you will build a track using always the start tile, the arrival, and an extra tile to represent the end of the track. In between these sections, you place 3 tiles that will come from a selection of tiles that we'll find in the box. Then each player chooses an inventor that they will play in the game. You have Tesla, you have Marconi, Edison, the Wright brothers, and so on and so forth. Each inventor is represented by 2 unique starting cards. These are the ones for Tesla. They represent the main and initial part of the invention that the inventor will drive during the game. So you put these in front of you. There is a pawn that will indicate your position on the board, and of course you place that on the start space at the beginning of the game. Each player also has a dial which represents the level of armor that the invention of the player has. You take damage, you lose armor, you repair your invention, you recover armor. There are 4 decks of cards in the game. You need to keep them separate. As you can see, they have different background colors. The decks mainly represent parts of inventions that the players can use to improve on their initial invention, and also the cards can provide the types of resources to the players. There's also a deck that mainly deals with special effects, with the boost effects. Now, at the beginning of each turn, each player draws 4 cards, 1 from each deck. Then each player will choose a card and will place that card face down in front of himself, like this. Once you've made your selection, you will reveal the card, you will resolve the card, and then you pass your remaining cards to the next player, and you receive the remaining hand of cards from the previous player. So you will have players going around the table, choosing a card, resolving it, and passing the remaining hands around, pretty much Seven Wonders style, until all cards from the draft have been resolved, assigned, and placed. That will end the drafting phase. But let me tell you a bit more about what the drafting phase does. Well, during the drafting phase, you may have chosen a card that doesn't resolve immediately, a boost card that has an effect. In that case, you simply declare that you have the boost card, and then you will resolve it later when the effect applies. For example, this one needs to be played at the start of the racing phase. We are not there yet, we are during the drafting phase. Parts of the invention can be used in one of several ways. You can simply choose to use the card that you selected to attach it to your invention. For example, I can choose to take this card and to attach it there. As you can see, there are connections, and you have to respect the connections. So as your invention grows, you will have to attach further parts of your invention to available connections. Brown parts, which represent copper parts, are very good for this because they give a lot of connections. Other types of cards, not so much. They specialize in different things. But you do not have to attach a part card to your invention. You can choose during the drafting phase to discard it to receive a certain amount of dice of the type and color indicated on the card itself. If I discard this, I get 2 blue dice. If I discard this card, I get 2 red dice from the supply. Or you can choose to discard a card for 2 cogs, which are represented by these tokens here and can be used later. So during the drafting phase, players will build their invention and will grab dice. Will possibly also prepare for what may come next by storing boost cards. At the end of the drafting phase, players will have something like this in front of themselves. They may have cards, they will have their invention, they will have dice and possibly cogs. Next you have the venting phase. Now, during the game you will roll dice and place the dice on your invention based on the colors of the available spaces. But those dice stay there. So from one turn to the other you will often want to free up spaces on your invention by removing dice so that you can then add new dice and perform new effects. The venting phase is a good time to do that because during the venting phase you can spend cogs, and each cog allows you to remove 2 pips from one of the dice on your invention. For example, if I spend this cog, this 4 die here, which has 4 pips, can be turned into a 2. Then I can spend another cog and I simply remove that die. So the venting phase is when you're freeing up spaces so that you can do more stuff in the next turn. The next phase. And the next phase after the venting phase is the racing phase, during which you grab the dice that you acquired during the drafting phase. There may also be effects that will give you other dice in this phase here. For example, here we have start of race phase, gain a red die. This card here allows me to pick up at this point a yellow die or 2 cogs, or to add 1 point of armor to my dial. So you may grab extra dice at that point, and then you roll them and you will use them by assigning them to your invention. So racing phase, it is time to use some dice, and here I built a really massive machine to show you how that works. Now, you assign your dice to the slots that you have available at that point, and as you can see there are numbers associated with some of those slots. When you place a die in a slot associated with a certain number, you divide the pips that you placed in that area by the number indicated on the die, and that shows you how many times you can perform the corresponding action. Sounds complicated, but it's really pretty simple. It means that for each 3 pips that I place in this area, I can perform a defensive action, which means I can improve my armor by 1. By placing a 6 there, I divide it by 3 is 2 actions. That means I improve my shields by 2. That simple. Here I have very good actions, but they're pretty expensive because I need to place at least a 5 in one of those 2 slots to be able to activate that action. And if I do, then I can choose to either improve my armor by 1 or to receive a blue die, or I could choose to receive a blue die and to move 1 space on the board. I'll show you movement later. Other effects. Here we have a star. That means that it doesn't matter the result that is on the die, which is a good way to place results that are low. Then all you need to do is to match the color, you fill up that slot, and you receive the advantage, which in this case would be to remove a red die from your invention, so that is good because it frees up another space, and you also receive a cog. So the main effects here pretty much are to get new dice that you can roll, to remove dice from your invention, to receive armor points, or to improve your armor, or to move. These are the main effects, but there are also parts that give you different effects. For example, this is a part that I like very much. It allows you to store unused dice. At the end of the racing phase, you need to discard all the dice that you did not use, unless you have this part here. Then you can store them and re-roll them during the race phase. So there may be a little bit of luck here when you're rolling your dice and hoping for some results to come. But there are ways to mitigate that, and a very important one is to use cogs. You can spend a cog to reroll a die entirely, or you can spend a cog to add 1 pip to a die. This is very important in case you're missing just 1 pip to get the next action from a certain die. This is, well, a very good option. Also, you may be in an area of the board where you can use a cog to purchase an extra die. Some areas on the board have that symbol there. If you're there and you spend a cog, then you receive an extra die of the corresponding color. I talked about the move action. That is pretty simple. When you're moving, for each move action that you perform with your machine, you move your pawn on the board by 1. However, there are obstacles here. When you enter an area that has these symbols here, which is the mountains with a number, your machine receives a number of damage points equal to the number printed there. By entering that area, I'm getting 2 damage points, so I reduce my armor by 2. If I enter there too, then I lose another point of armor. And at the end of the racing phase, players need to check their dials, and at the end of the racing phase is when they apply the damage. So you may rush to the mountains and your machine is still working, but the damage will be there. It will be applied at the end of the racing phase, during which you will lose a part of your machine for each number on your dial under the 0. If you're at -3, you'll lose 3 parts, -5, 5 parts. That means that you need to discard cards from your machine equal to the number of damage points under 0 that are showing on your dial, and then you need to rearrange your parts so that all parts are still connected. If after you lost the required amount of cards, you're not able to connect all of your cards, you lose the cards that you have not been able to connect. Play continues like this until one of the players crosses the finish line. At that point, all players still receive a turn, and after the last turn has been resolved, the player who is further past the finish line is the winner. So what you're trying to do, of course, is to move, because this is a race game after all, even though you spend so much time doing other stuff. Yet what you do is relevant to moving, so it doesn't feel like the game becomes completely unfocused. So you're trying to do, but there are several considerations that you have to take into account, and balancing those considerations is a big part of the game, and definitely part of the challenge of playing the game. Challenge in the good sense, in the sense of a challenge that gives you a reward, that makes you feel satisfied, and it's fun to accept, especially if you then are able to meet the challenge. The considerations here are getting stuff to burn into your machine, getting resources to fuel your machine so the machine can move, but at the same time these machines are really big and just too big and too complicated for what they're trying to achieve, and so you're always twinking and you're just tinkering and tweaking things and removing pieces and adding pieces. So while you're fueling a machine to move it, you also need to worry about venting it so that it is then able to produce more energy by releasing the old energy, and at the same time you also need to fix it because it does break down continuously. And really you can have different styles of racing, from like reckless racing, putting together a lot of parts of the machine and then just losing them on the Alps as you just drive without caring about all the bumps that you encounter, or finding a more careful, a more balanced way of getting shields, go through different passage, getting new shields, and so on and so forth. And you do not have to marry one of the two styles. Very often players will change style or approach during gameplay. The machines offer a lot of variety, a lot of possibility. I really like that. I really like how you can build your machine. It has a very strong thematic appeal to me. It has a visual appeal. I really like the way these machines, these crazy looking machines look. They remind me of something that Will Coyote may build. So actually when I play the game, I also take the aesthetic consideration into account. I want to make things look right, not just all the joints go together so that they get certain resources. If I get too deep into the aesthetic aspect, then that would probably be bad because I would lose the game. But there are ways of enjoying the theme while also enjoying the mechanics, enjoying the challenges, enjoying the balance of resources, the juggling of resources that you have to be able to put together. Now, luck, there are cards that you get a return, and will you get good cards, bad cards? I don't know, I can't tell you, but I know that you will get cards that are to be shared with the opponent. So if an opponent gets an excellent hand and you get a terrible one, then the cards are drafted going around the table, you'll grab some of those. So by that Seven Wonders style of drafting, which I've seen several times lately in games, you can mitigate that. There is part of strategy there in choosing which cards you want to keep and which cards you feel comfortable leaving to an opponent. It's not just, oh, I'm gonna grab the best card. Things are organic, of course, because I see that there's a card here that you would really benefit from it. Then I may consider keeping it for myself, even though that may not be the best choice for me per se. So there's that aspect there. Roll dice, terrible die rolls, yes, but if you planned ahead and you purchase cogs, you can modify that by spending cogs. I think this is a game that has been tweaked and tinkered around quite a bit, just like one of the machines represented in the game. The game works. I don't know if there will be many modifications throughout the final phase of the production, but the game seems pretty ready to me. It's a game that is fun to play. Maybe in the final version there will be more terrain tiles. I think that would bring more variety to the game. As of now, you do use almost all of the tiles that come, at least in this prototype. I don't know what things will be like in the final version. One thing that probably not everybody will like, is not everybody's cup of tea, is that the game does not have much direct interaction. You do not, like in other steampunk race games like Quicksilver, attack the opponent. There are some cards that do that. There are some cards that make parts of the road harder for other players to cross, things like that, but it's a minor aspect of the game. If you play the game as a solitaire and you manage to move fast and not to take too much damage and to vent your things at the right time, then you're doing well. There is not a type of confrontational interaction. So there are times in which it does feel a little bit like a multiplayer solitaire, At the same time, if you see that an opponent is way ahead, you may switch your strategy, you may play a little more bravely, you may dare more because you need to catch up. So there are some forms of interaction. It doesn't feel prominent, it doesn't feel like it's a major element of the game, but I believe it is there to some extent. And I personally, I just enjoyed the game. I enjoyed the game as is, so I didn't mind the fact that there wasn't much direct interaction. I enjoyed building up my machine and destroying it or letting it fall apart in some parts of the race. I enjoyed balancing all the resources that the game has to offer. So, fun game. I definitely enjoy Steampunk Rally. It is going to be on Kickstarter soon. If this is a game that you think you may enjoy, please have a look at the page of the game. Personally, this is a game that I enjoyed and definitely will want to add a copy of the game in my collection once the full edition of the game comes out.